From the early years of the Republic, Great Britain was always a thorn in the side of the United States of America. Whether it was the protracted 8-year American Revolution, the British incitement of the War of 1812, or the continued land disputes on the continent of North America, Great Britain's relationship with her former colonies remained strained at best. And Great Britain did nothing to alleviate that tension during the conflict that sought to rip the new nation into pieces. When the American Civil War erupted in 1861, Britain's Queen Victoria proclaimed Great Britain's neutrality and recognized the Confederate States of America as belligerent status, which angered the federal government in Washington because this, in effect, acted as de facto recognition of the Confederacy by Great Britain. And although the Confederacy could not technically secure arms from ports through the British Empire because neutrality was declared, they could, however, obtain fuel and supplies. And for this reason, the North always protested this act of neutrality because it still allowed the South to gather those vital supplies needed to sustain and carry out a war. Adding to this tension, relations weren't helped when the Federal Navy raided a British ship and found 2 Confederate envoys en route to London, leading to the international crisis known as the Trent Affair in 1861, an affair that could have led to an outright war between Britain and the federal government in Washington, since relations were already shaky at best. But while Britain tried to walk this fine line of neutrality, they knew their relationship with the Confederate States of America was vital, much more than most nations. During the past 40 years, Britain and the southern states had developed an economic relationship that was mutually indispensable to each other. And that relationship was centered around cotton. The South had it, and the British needed it. And the cotton connection was so strong that some southern states had established satellite offices for their cotton trading empire in Great Britain prior to the breakout of the Civil War. These satellite offices would prove to be vital to the South's ability to continue their efforts to fight the Civil War. Since an overwhelming majority of the banks in the United States were in the North and now cut off from the Confederacy, they needed to go elsewhere. Enter Great Britain. Local economies in British cities such as Liverpool and Manchester relied heavily on southern cotton to sustain their viability. Any disruption could cause untold economic misery to Britain's working class and lead to political instability. And when the blockade of southern ports occurred by the Northern Navy, it made it even harder to export their cotton, thus causing a massive strain in the southern states as well as Great Britain, who faced new obstacles importing cotton. However, this dilemma put the Confederacy in a good position to leverage the demand for cotton by often trading needed weapons and supplies to these British companies in exchange for their cotton. And the satellite offices that were already set up in Britain over the years acted as financial conduits for transactions to occur. So, while the British government wasn't technically arming the South, they did nothing to stop British companies who were providing these arms and other vital supplies to keep the Confederates' cause alive. To combat the Union blockade around their ports and equalize the naval force on the seas, the Confederacy would need ships too. This is where Great Britain was also clever with their neutrality. Since it was illegal to build warships under the Declaration of Neutrality, many of these businesses in Britain found a loophole to aid the Confederacy in search for more boats. These companies built boats that were not technically warships in their harbors and often concealed them under a different name. However, when they were ready to arm these ships, they were sent offshore to be fully armed and then subsequently renamed. The most famous example of this act of British trickery was with the Confederate battleship the Alabama, which wreaked untold havoc on the Union's fleet for over 2 years and was responsible for sinking over 60 of the Northern Army's ships. The Civil War was one of the most devastating periods in American history, dragging on for over 4 years, when most thought it would be over in less than 4 months due to the South's lack of resources. And it may well have concluded much sooner had it not been for neutral Great Britain provided the needed support to keep the South going.